I get so caught up in the middle, thinking of drowning in those blue eyes. I'm losing sight 'cause I am falling. I'm so deep down, and it's not a lie that I die. I can't hide what this is. Yeah, I keep drowning in those blue eyes, and you can tell me all of your lies. I will put out all of the fire if it gets too dark. I'll be your light. Be your light. I'll be your light. If it gets too dark, I'll be your light. Be your light. I'll be your light. If it gets too dark, yeah, I can carry all that you've got. Two heavy hearts is not a lot.
9.37 miles, 11 minutes, 3 seconds per mile today. Had a really challenging run today, and it's not because of the paces, it wasn't because of the distance, it's because I'm trying to run by heart rate, and today was just absolutely maddening. I just couldn't figure it out. Spent pretty much the last 3 miles walking, if not running today, trying to keep my heart rate low for the purpose of today's run. And now, those of you who have been watching every day, you've kind of heard that I've been trying to keep heart rate low for the past couple of runs. And part of that is just because I'm coming back from a marathon. It's still been less than 2 weeks since my last marathon. A lot of people are only just starting running again right now, but I've been back at it for about 5 or 6 runs at this point, which is pretty normal for me. But one of the things that I wanted to try while I was kind of in this recovery mode anyway, was a little bit of heart rate training, or at least giving it another shot. It's something that I've kind of looked at before, I've always been thinking about in the back of my mind, and I thought this kind of transitional period, this gap period in between marathons would be a good time to kind of give it a little bit more of a shot. So today, first 4 miles were great in like the mid 9-minute miles, which is very, very slow compared to what I'm used to, but I was fine with that. I could live with that. I could run like that, and I was keeping my heart rate in the right spot. About that point, about 4.5 miles in, I hit the turn, and everything started going haywire. I couldn't even think about running without my heart rate spiking all the way up to like the 160s, which is way higher than my goal number of like 145. I want to stay within 135 to 145 beats per minute. And so every time my heart rate got high, I would just start walking. So that way that would bring my heart rate down really quickly, or I would just stop. Because I'm not worried about pace, I'm not worried about distance. I'm trying not to be worried about pace or distance. So I can't help it, but I still am. I'm trying not to, but I'll just stop or I would walk. And that would get my heart rate down. And then as soon as I took like 3 or 4 paces, the heart rate would shoot right back up to 160. And I couldn't, it would just skip over that range that I needed to be in. And it was really frustrating. So I tried like power walking, but that would stay too low. Then I tried shuffling my feet like as slow as I could, like just shuffling feet. And that would just make my heart rate shoot up as well too. So I just didn't know what was happening. I was incredibly mad about it, and I was ready to just give up. It threw off my entire day because I'd already gotten far out as far as my out and back goes. And so I was extremely late getting back home, and it just threw my entire day off. And I was extremely frustrated with it. And I was pretty much ready to I wasn't ready to give up heart rate training, but it certainly made me want to today. It was a hard day. Now, granted, it's only been 4 or 5 runs or however many runs since the marathon that I've been kind of thinking about this. And so I know that's not enough to give heart rate training a full evaluation. I was planning on not talking about heart rate training for a while until I had a better feel for it and get a little bit of progress for it to see kind of how it suited me. But just today's run was so frustrating, I had to talk about it. And today's video isn't about heart rate training or evaluating it, but just kind of venting some of my frustrations for you guys, because I know a lot of you guys have been talking about heart rate training, recommending it to me. Even back when I was training for my first BQ attempt back in May and April, ahead of that June marathon, you guys were telling me about it. And to give a little bit of background on heart rate training, or why people who aren't familiar with it should even care, I first heard about it kind of back then when you guys were telling me about it in the comments. And I also started finding videos by Floris Gearman, Extra Milus. And so he has been interviewing people, for the most part, who train by low heart rate, but also some who don't, or have variations on kind of the idea. And that through that, I found one of his videos about a marathon runner who has been using the Tanda model as kind of his guide. And that's where I got familiarized with that concept and the Tanda race predictor. But not only is that thing a race predictor, but it's also kind of like a training guide. And that's kind of makes the most sense to me. And I'll have another video kind of more fully describing kind of what the differences are between those. But that kind of gives the background of how I've kind of been learning about and thinking about heart rate training through Floris. I've heard more about Maffetone and MAF training, and a lot of you guys are MAF training as well, and some of your results have been just absolutely phenomenal. And so it's been kind of really piquing my interest, and it aligns more closely in terms of how I view marathon racing and also marathon training. And so I was never really fully ready to go to MAF training yet, but I thought, this would be a good time to give it a try. And the ultimate concept behind it, and I'll oversimplify it just for the sake of keeping this video a little bit short, is that through this Maffetone formula, there's a certain heart rate range that you should do all your training at. And over time, for the same amount of effort at a heart rate, that'll start getting lower and lower and lower. And so it's kind of the marathon training plan where it takes a long time. It's not necessarily something that fits in just a 16-week or 12-week cycle, but over time, you train at this very narrow heart rate, and it makes your heart very efficient at running. And so you're training your aerobic systems versus anaerobic systems. It focuses on how much the marathon is an aerobic race, and very small portion of that is an anaerobic race. So it suggests or directs you to do all your training at an aerobic heart rate, which in turn not only trains your aerobic system, but also activates different kind of energy burning mechanisms, so you can get very detailed. So that's the general concept in as small of a nutshell as I could put it. I know I do tend to be a little bit wordy. So that's kind of some of the things that I'm exploring and thinking about, and where I maybe would like to go. I'm not sure. MAF training still seems a little bit fanciful to me in terms of like the results seem almost too good to be true in a lot of ways. So I'm coming in with it with optimism, but also some cautious skepticism as well. But it's something that I feel like I needed to test out for myself, at least for a little bit. And I'll continue to test it for a little while longer. If I keep having runs like today, I don't know how much longer I will last. But I'm hoping at least into the next portion of the next marathon training block, I can continue training like this and kind of seeing how it suits me. So we'll see how that goes. But today is a day where all you MAF guys out there, all you people who have been telling me about heart rate training and how it's worked for you, I'd love to have just some help, some feedback. I don't understand why like my heart rate just started spiking like crazy. I did have a gel at the turnaround point, which did have caffeine in it. But I also had coffee before I left for the run. So I'm not sure that the caffeine is necessarily the culprit, although I'm sure it didn't help. Something else to consider is that right before the heart rate started going crazy, is the heart rate dipped to like the 110s for a while, and I couldn't figure out why. So I don't know if it was an adjustment or a positioning problem or a conduction problem. I did order some conduction gel just in case that is the issue. It's a little bit chilly now in Chicago. I wasn't sweating. I certainly wasn't sweating at the level of effort I was exerting out there today, so I don't know if that's what it was. I don't really want to blame the equipment. I think the far more likely explanation is that my aerobic system kind of taps out at about 45 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. So that's also a very real possibility. So something to consider. Maybe the rest of my body in terms of what it can run is stronger than what my aerobic system, that 135 to 145 heart rate zone, can maintain. I think that's a very real possibility. I think that's probably what's going on. So I'm going to go out for another long run tomorrow. I'll try to do the same run again. And And then we'll see if the same thing happens. Then I think it's more that my aerobic system is tapping out, and that's why I'm just spiking in terms of my heart rate. But hopefully what I would love to see is that I just kind of have a nice easy run for the entire time, because that would be great, because that means it's kind of, not that it's working, but that means it's the kind of progress that I'm expecting. So we'll see how that goes. Now, before I go, I do want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week. It's Adalto Castrejón, who's going to be running the New York City Marathon in just a couple of weeks. And he's raising money for New York Roadrunners Team for Kids, an organization that provides programming, experiences, and guidance to young runners so that they can be introduced to the world and the joys of running. I was happy to donate $70 to Adalto's fundraising efforts, and I'll post a link in the description in case you'd like to learn more. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.